Reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
You're listening to The Happy Hearthstone. This show is brought to you by Doghouse Systems, who make some of the most powerful gaming PCs around and have awesome customer service from my own experience. Use the coupon code MMOReporter at doghousesystems.com and get a free 120GB SSD on top of the 1TB hard drive that comes with your system. By Audible, hands down the best audiobook service in the entire universe. Seriously, if you have any sort of commute or just prefer to listen to your books, you've got to check Audible out. Go to audibletrial.com/MMOReporter and get a free 1-month trial and a free audiobook. If you'd like to directly support this show and the nice people who make it, you can find more information at gamediplomat.com/donate. Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Happy Hearthstone podcast, the longest running Hearthstone podcast in the history of space and time and cards. I'm your host, Josh Augustine, and this week I'm joined once again by the, I need an adjective. Someone give me an adjective. It's Mad Lib style. Harry, Scott Lance.
How's it going?
Good. Hey, you're lucky. If you're lucky that's the best I got, because when I play Mad Libs, at least growing up, because I played it when I was, in middle school and stuff, it was always like smelly and toilet and stuff like that, which was quite funny at the time, I assure you. So you got off easy this time, Scott. How are you doing?
Doing all right. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It actually when I was reading the intro, it reminded me of one of the very first episodes of the show that we recorded. The biggest controversy that we had with the audience and with guest hosts was how to pronounce Hearthstone. Because it hadn't, it had been announced at PAX, but no one really knew what they said. And some people said Hearthstone and some people said Hearthstone. And it made me laugh to kind of remember, oh yeah, how noob we were back then. But now it's like anyone that doesn't say Hearthstone, well, it's just outrageous.
I know, and actually there's still a lot of pros and a lot of other podcast hosts that still say Hearthstone. And I think it's because they don't know the derivation of the word necessarily, that the tone comes from World of Warcraft, where the Hearthstone is what returns you to the inn, where you can sit next to the fire, the warm, cozy fire, and its hearth. Therefore, Hearthstone.
That is one way to know it. I actually learned it through the Percy Jackson books. Because the last god in Olympus is the god of the hearth, or whatever. And so I was talking with Jen about it, and she said hearth, and I was like, what? There you go. There's the answer. So read books, kids, or play video games, whichever one you want. Just learn something.
Hearth.
All right, let's talk about why we're happy before we get into all sorts of reasons to not be happy and be happy with our card review. I'm happy because our new company, Daybreak, we used to be called Sony Online Entertainment. It's the company I work for during the day. We have been next to the San Diego Food Bank for basically our entire existence, which is like a charity group that collects food and distributes it to pantries and stuff like that. And our company has gone over probably every few months and kind of does like a volunteer day, and I've never gone. It's usually during crunch, and I just can't get away. But today was the first time I got to go, and it was actually quite fun. There was like 20 of us over there. We're sorting foods, and I learned so much about the expiration dates of foods. Like, it blew my mind. Scott, do you know how long after the expiration date something, dried goods, like brownie mix, will last?
1 year.
4 years.
Whoa.
4 years, and this is all FDA approved or whatever. If it was canned goods, it was also, I'm going to get this wrong, so don't quote me on this. It was like 2 years, I think. But if it had tomatoes in it, then it's only 1 year. Tomatoes apparently are no good canned. So, I don't know. I learned a lot of interesting stuff, and I learned where everything puts all of their expiration dates. Like, I want to go to the grocery store now and just check everything. They've created a monster, I guess is what I'm trying to say, Scott.
I love it. You're going to be eating like 3-year-old food, and then you're going to be all primed for the post-apocalyptic. Speaking of post-apocalyptic, actually, H1Z1, the producer at work, came in this morning raving about how much fun she had over the weekend.
Oh, nice. I'm glad to hear that. I did too. So I played that game a lot during testing. I kind of stopped playing. For people that don't know, H1Z1 is another game that my company makes. It's like DayZ, kind of survival zombie apocalypse. And I played their Battle Royale mode lately. Do you know if she was playing that or playing the main mode?
I think main mode.
Okay. I played Battle Royale a lot this weekend as well and had a lot of fun. It's cool. It's basically like Hunger Games. So they throw you in with like 120 people, and that's the last man standing. It lasts like 10 minutes maybe. It was really fun. That game is definitely coming along. It's pretty unpolished at launch, but there's been some cool updates. I'm glad to hear they liked it, though.
Yeah, she was a big fan.
So why are you happy, Scott? Are you happy because you're playing H1Z1 too? Is that it? Is this just a Daybreak promotional show?
I'm not. I haven't tried it yet. But we did just have a major milestone at work, which is pretty cool. Team put in a lot of work the last couple of weeks, and it's just, it's sometimes really cool to build towards a milestone, and you spend a lot of time like kind of polishing the game to look good and feel good. And anyway, it's just really fulfilling. So I do hope to be able to talk about it at some point. We're still not quite there yet, but
so this is just another tease, is what you're saying, Scott?
It's just another tease.
Oh man! All right. Well, you can keep your secrets for now, Scott. But if it's a San Diego Food Bank game, you'll let me co-star in it, right?
I'll see what I can do.
All right. I know expiration dates like crazy, bud. All right. So this week we are here for the Blackrock Mountain Review. Continuation. Last episode, we covered all the neutral cards. And this week, we're diving into the class cards. So these are the cards that, is it fair to say, Scott, are a little more powerful, usually, than neutral cards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in general, class cards do tend to be a little more powerful than neutral cards.
Cool. So each class, just to remind you of Blackrock Mountain, right? Each class got 2 class-specific cards from Blackrock Mountain, which was the PvE Adventure set. If you want more info about what Blackrock Mountain is, listen to last week's episode. That goes through all the neutral cards. We also explain how the whole thing works, how you buy it, that sort of stuff. But we've got 2 cards for each class. I believe, is it a rare and an epic? Is that
rare
right?
Rare and a common.
Rare and a common. Mm-hmm. Cool.
There are no epics in the set, I believe.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Mistaken. It is common, rare, and then straight to legendary. Cool. Yep. So each class has a common and a rare, and we're going to give our thoughts on both of them. So, Scott, unless you got another preamble you want to do, I say we just jump right in.
Let's do it.
All right. I'll go first. We're going to do Druid first, alphabetical. The common card is Druid of the Flame. It is a 3-cost minion, a 2/2, but it has choose one, which basically means when you play it, you get to choose one of these. Transform it into a 5/2 minion or a 2/5 minion. So I'm going to be honest, Scott. We're getting this show off to a good start because we disagree on several of the cards, and this is one of the ones.
We did. Yeah.
This is like, so last week I felt like, in any time of our comments as we were looking at cards, I was like, oh, I'd prefer a 4 here, and you're like, okay. But this one, we have we could basically publish this as a thesis for some sort of doctorate degree, I'm sure, of our debate back and forth on some of these cards. But this was one of the ones, because I would not run a 2/5 minion for 3, and I wouldn't run a 5/2 minion for 3. Either of those in my deck. So to me, it gets a slight bonus because you get to choose, but that bonus is kind of negated because it can also be silenced to me. So to me, it's kind of like you're giving me 2 options, but I'm not excited for either. What do you think?
So I like this card more than you do. Which is surprising because I feel like for most of the other cards, I was kind of the naysayer of the two of us. Yeah. And I just to try to do my homework, I did yesterday, I think, build a deck and played quite a few games with it just to get a feel for it. And I have to say, I walked away at least as impressed as I was going in. So it didn't dissuade me from valuing it more highly. Both forms aren't particularly exciting, and I would never put a 5/2 for 3 in my deck because I wouldn't want to rely on it. But the thing is, being able to cast these guys conditionally under the context, here's what surprised me. Over half the times I cast this guy, and I cast him a lot yesterday, over half the times I cast him as a 5/2, which I did not expect. I thought it would be like 20% of the time. It was slightly over 50% of the time.
Was that just because you had like a taunt wall up?
It was sometimes because of taunt. It was sometimes because my opponent I'd been able to do control and he had nothing up, or he only had like a one attack creature in play. Other times I would do the 2/5, and then with Druid you have lots of spells that can either give like +2/+2 in taunt or +0/+4 in taunt, either of which are really good on the 2/5 form. Also, a 2/5 on turn 3 I find to be pretty good because he'll generally be able to one shot and still survive anything that was already on the board. So he's really good for cleaning up all the trash that may be on the board up to that point.
All right. The one thing I'll give you, Scott, is this at least puts Magma Rager to shame and should just bury that card forever.
Sure.
Because that's a 3 for 5/1. Just all around, this card is straight up better than that.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So what are you thinking here on score? Are you going to 5, Scott? How crazy are you?
Oh, no.
Okay.
So Arena, he's basically a vanilla. I would, Spider Tank to me has kind of the ideal stats. If I were to just to choose and put something reliable in my deck, it would be a 3/4. Probably my next favorite after that would be a 2/5, which this guy is capable of. But with the choice between the two, I found that to be a lot more valuable than I was expecting. So I'm going to put my hair above a 3, but let's just call it a 3.
All right. I can go with a 3 because it is vanilla stats, right?
Yeah.
It's a little suboptimal, but like you said, you do the trade-off of being able to choose which suboptimal one you want is valuable.
Yeah.
Constructed the same. I mean, I know you mentioned that, or did you, at least in the notes you mentioned that they're both beasts.
Yeah, both forms are beasts.
Are druids really caring about beasts? I mean, it's just that one card, right?
Yeah, it's just Druid of the Fang, although the payoff is huge for Druid of the Fang. I don't think Druid is there yet enough to care. I think they need 1 or 2 more cards that are beasts and 1 or 2 more cards that can leverage being beasts. But I'm thinking about putting together a beast Druid, in part because I have a soft spot for stealth cards, and 2 really good stealth cards are beasts, and that's Stranglethorn Tiger and Jungle Panther.
Yeah.
And I can't help but wonder if there's something cool to do there. Like, I get so much mileage out of those cards. Those are way overperformers for me, and to the point where I put them in some of my constructed decks if I just kind of want a poor man's stealth. But being able to drop, for example, a 5/5 stealth and then attack with it, and then give it +2/+2 and taunt on the next turn after I attack with it, or actually before I attack with it. I mean, holy cow! It's hard to compete with that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally agree.
But yeah, so then you get a card that gets +3/+3 because you just happen to have a beast around. So I'll probably experiment with that soon. But I do think that we probably needed to wait another expansion or 2. But this is a case where they're clearly developing a sub theme of beasts here. It's just not there yet.
Yeah, I do like to see actually those slow growing decks, right, where you can see this and be like, cool, but they didn't try and jam it all in one set. You just know, like, okay, a few sets from now, this could be a real thing.
Right, like Demons. They did that with Demons. Yeah.
Very much. All right, what's up next?
All right, Volcanic Lumber. So this guy is a 7/8 for 9 mana who's with Taunt, whose cost is reduced by 1 for every creature that died that turn. So I have mixed feelings about these. This mechanic is present on a variety of cards. I do think it compares favorably to Ironbark Protector, which I already like and would call probably a 3. The fact that this guy can get cheaper and that you can build your deck around making him cheaper is pretty cool. Druid does have some AoE, and Druid does have some interesting combo cards with like Force of Nature or Poison Seeds or other cards that can kind of either summon a few or kill a few cards. Even Dark Whispers, filling the board full of 5/5s one turn, and then assuming some live to your next turn, throwing them all at somebody in order just to get a cheap one of these the next turn. Yeah, that's not so bad.
Hold on, Scott. I gotta clarify something. Did you just casually reference Poison Seeds as not the worst card in the game? Because that has been your trend for many months.
If it was used in a combo, it might give Poison Seeds some amount of value. So let's see. If there were 9 minions on the board and you use Poison Seeds, then everybody would have 2/2s except you could cast the Volcanic Lumber for free.
All right. So I'm going, except you couldn't because your board would be full.
Well, no, because it's 9 creatures on the board total, and you can have 7
okay,
per
gotcha.
side. Yeah.
So I'm going to insist that when you make your beast deck, you at least run 1 copy of Poison Seeds and try it. I insist. I insist. You just have to.
That's repulsive. It makes me feel dirty.
Well, Scott, I'm sorry. I mean, it's just the laws of the universe. You've talked badly on it for this long. You owe it. You owe it an attempt in a beast deck.
All right. Well, I'll tell you that. How about it's not necessarily a beast deck, but one day I will build a deck to try to make the most of poison seeds.
I'm gonna read the flavor text for you and see if that can convince you. Poison seed bagel is the least popular bagel at McTiggan's Druidic Bagel Emporium. Don't you want to be the hipster that orders the least popular bagel? All right, fine. So wait, hold on, Scott. I haven't even said my thoughts on this yet. I'm just way out of whack. All right, let me throw out 2 cents in there before you throw in your score. All right, is that fair?
All right, of course.
All right. So to me, I looked at this card and immediately thought, like, this is great. I can run 4 copies of Ironbark Protector. Like, Druid already owned the title. And correct me if you disagree, but I think they own the title for the best late game minions of any class, right?
Oh, hands down. If you can get there, then yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and this just like seals it, right? Now they're just like, they're lapping everyone else, just showing off all the options they have. And that's kind of what this is to me. Like, I say I can run 4. I don't know if I actually would run, 2 of each. But this is options, right? In different types of Druid decks, maybe you run one or the other. I really like this card. I think it's really strong.
Yeah, I agree. So what would you give it?
I gave it a 4. Because when I looked at it, I cannot in good faith give this a 5. Even though, that little, is it Tommy? Is he the one that just goes crazy with the card personality types?
Oh, Timmy?
Timmy, thank you. The Timmy inside of me is like, oh, this could be so fun. I could play it for 0 mana. It'd be amazing. But my brain, cuts Timmy off there and just says, you know what? You're probably going to get it on the board for 7, right? On average. But a 7/8 taunt for 7, awesome. Way above vanilla for me.
Yeah, and even getting it, exactly. Getting it on the board, a 7/8 taunt for 7, I would rather have than an 8/8 taunt for 8, because it just means you're more likely to bring on more games. It's going to have an impact on the game that much sooner, and it's more efficient stat-wise.
Yeah, that is very true. All right, you take that Ironbark Protector. You're lame. You're better when you're burning.
Bam.
Bam.
So you said a 4. Was that for Arena or Constructed or both?
So that was for Constructed. Arena, though, I mean, it's still... Arena is very minion-based. I mean, minions are going to be dying a lot. I think it's probably pretty same in Arena.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that you should probably be able to summon this for 7 at some point in the late game, around turn 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. And a 7/8 taunt on the board is solid. And what's the worst that happens is you overpay by a mana and you get... So, he's maybe a mana and a half off if for some reason you can't ever get a minion to die on your turn.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of those things to me, like, I know we're supposed to avoid best case scenarios, but there is value in looking at the worst case versus the best case, I think. Do you agree?
The floor versus the ceiling, as they say.
Yeah. Okay, the floor versus the ceiling. Look, I'm learning fancy card gamer talk.
So you want a high ceiling, right? You want a high ceiling, which means that there's a lot of limitless possibility, and then you also want a high floor, which means that it just doesn't, like, the worst case is not very bad.
Yeah, because I mean, there will be a game. It won't be often, right? But you'll play this card for 4 mana or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And that'll totally happen, and that's going to be a game changer in that match.
Right, if you can bust this guy out on turn 5 or 6 by just like trading minions and clearing the board, and the board's near empty or empty, and then suddenly you have a 7/8 taunt on turn, 6, that's pretty nice.
All right, so that is Druid, and a week later, Scott, we are ready to talk about the Hunter. This one took a lot of thinking, right? That's what took us so long?
Only a week.
Yeah, so if you guys noticed, the first part of the show might have had a few audio glitches. We were having internet problems when we were recording this, so we actually delayed the rest of the podcast until we could get a new time when the internet was solid, which hopefully, knock on wood, is right now. It sounded pretty good so far during our tests. So Scott, any thoughts on Druid cards since we've had another week? Or I feel pretty solid with the choices we've made.
Yeah, actually, I played with a Druid Swarm deck a bit more since last week, and both cards felt reasonably solid to me. Volcanic Lumber definitely had a few nice moments, and even Druid of the Flame, when I threw like a +2/+2 on him or something in his 2/5 form, it becomes a 4/7 taunt, man. That's no joke either, and that can happen pretty early in the game.
All right, sweet. All right, so let's move on to Hunter then, because we got a lot of classes to get through.
Yep.
All right. First up, I got the good card this time. Quick Shot. It's a 2-cost spell. It's a common. Deal 3 damage. If your hand is empty, draw a card. Now, it's nice and solid, right? I mean, Warlocks have a spell like this. Hunter, Face Hunter, I mean, loves this sort of stuff. It's not required to hit a minion. You can hit anywhere you want. 3 damage to any source for 2 mana is always going to be viable.
Yeah, and they couldn't make it cheaper, they couldn't make it less powerful because, I guess targeted would still be a benefit. I was thinking, they can already do 2 mana for 2 damage, but only to the opposing hero. So yeah, this is good. This is the equivalent of Dark Bomb, which a lot of Warlocks run because it's a good card, and every once in a while you'll get that bonus.
Yeah, I read this card as if that bonus isn't there, because I've actually never procced it first, but it's there, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, I procced it once. I did have it procced on me today, and I think it's been procced on me 2 or 3 times total. So it's not huge. Like you said, it's mostly 2 mana for 3 damage, which is fine. The bonus will happen every once in a while. I tried building a deck around it for this and Core Rager because they both have the same ability, and it just wasn't working. I shouldn't have built a deck around it.
Yeah, it's surprisingly hard to keep your hand completely empty until very late in the game.
Yeah, I was shocked at how hard it was, given how hard I was trying when I was deck building.
Yeah. All right, what's the next card they got? Is it as good? Is it as good?
So the next.
Sorry, we didn't give scores.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I mean, it's solid, right? With just 3s across the board.
Yeah, I'd say so. And maybe even on the high-ish end of 3, but still in a 3. I don't think it's like some amazing like go grab this, it's going to be the core of your deck sort of thing like a 4 could be.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Core Rager, 4 mana cost 4/4, which okay, it's only half a mana overcosted. Let's see what it does. Battle Cry. If your hand is empty, gain +3/+3. So that's big. I mean, I will say that pays off in spades if your hand is empty. But as we just discussed, your hand is never empty.
Yeah.
So
I mean, especially on a Battle Cry effect where it's like you have one chance, right? If this was just a passive, always going, maybe you could empty your card in the future so they have to take care of it. But it's just, this is so hard to proc.
Right. So if you ever end up with like 2 of these in your hand, you're only going to proc 1 at most. A lot of times you'll get to a point where it's like, okay, Core Rager's the last thing in my hand. Next turn, I finally do, and then you draw a card next turn, and it costs 5 mana, and you're like, ah. It happens a lot less than you think.
Yeah, this guy is just setting you up for disappointment. That's my saddest part about it. Like, because you look at it and immediately you're like, okay, how can I make this work? You're just not. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
but I mean it's still a 4/4 for 4, right? That's not awful.
It's not awful. Usually when I'm grading these things, especially for Arena, where the vanilla test matters a lot more than the combo potential of ranked or of constructed. But I usually give half a mana off on an ability that doesn't usually fire. That to me is a point off. So I would personally call it a 2 in that situation.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fair with that. I think it's probably a 2 in constructed too, because I mean you got beast synergy, but that's really about it. Like you said, even when you were playing a deck that was trying to proc this sort of stuff, it's hard to do.
I didn't proc this guy once. Not once.
All right, so 2 as well. Do you want to go lower than 2?
No, because he's not. I mean, he's a 4/4 beast for 4. I mean, yes, the battle cry is pretty useless, but it's not like he's paying a big tax in his stats for it.
Yep.
To me, the way I look at it is you're basically just paying 4 for a 4/4 beast, and you're maybe getting a lottery ticket that you get +3/+3 every once in a while, but I would put it probably less than 10% of the time.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's move on to mage cards then, because we got some more exciting stuff to talk about. I'm just getting all the best cards, Scott. I apologize. I got a Flamewalker, which is a 3-cost minion for mage. It's a rare. 2/4, but it has ability after you cast a spell, deal 2 damage randomly split among all enemies. I mean, this is exactly the sort of minion stats that a mage control deck wants on turn 3. He could probably trade with 2 if you're getting rushed. And the mage will be proccing this effect constantly, right? If the enemy doesn't remove it right away, I mean, just coin and arcane missile, that combo together is already right there. What's that? 4 extra damage plus 3, so 7 damage randomly dealt to enemies with that small combo. I'm calling it here, Scott. Mana Worm 2.0.
Yeah. I see it.
What do you think?
Yep. This guy's super solid. I had him used against me today, and I couldn't get my footing. He was just casting spells that were good removal anyway, and he did some arcane missiles on me. He did some mirror image on me that was free. It's hard to tell if it's worth using those kind of cards, but he did, and it worked out for him that one game. It was painful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I love about this card. You kind of hinted at it there, but this is the sort of card where the combo happens naturally. Like, when you're playing Control Mage, you don't go out of your way to proc this combo. You were going to play, like, Frostbolt and stuff like that anyways, and this just kind of gives you a free bonus.
Exactly.
I love that. You don't have to plan around it. You just get free bonus.
Yep. Now, I will say you need to activate his ability at least once in order for him to have been worth the cost. So if you think there's a danger if you're going to spend all 3 mana on turn 3 to put him on the board, and you don't expect him to live through the turn, he's probably not the most efficient play. You might want to hold on to him until either A, you're convinced he's going to live a little longer, or B, that a little deeper in the game when you can cast spells right after you drop him on the board. Yeah,
that is very true. For Arena, I love this guy, right? Because I think Mage is one of the few classes that is actually casting a lot of spells in Arena. Mm-hmm. So, are you ready for this? I'm saying 4. How do you feel about that?
I buy it, man. Mage doesn't have a whole lot of bad unplayable spells, because a lot of them are damage spells, and everybody loves damage spells.
Yeah, and even their secrets. I mean, they have the most viable secrets out of all the classes too.
Yeah, they're the most expensive, but that's because they're on par the best.
Yeah. All right, what do you think for constructed? Are we going even higher than 4?
What do you think?
I don't know. I could be talked into a 5 for a mage deck that is all about spells, right? Because our constructed score is, in the deck that wants it most. I mean, this guy can be incredible.
Yeah, I would say in a deck that wants him, you're probably going to deal 4 damage randomly split among enemies, and that's almost like a knife juggler firing 4 times. That's pretty good.
Yeah. For, like you said, a 1 stat cost is all you're paying to get that?
Yep.
It's pretty good. All right, so 5?
Let's do it.
All right.
And he's got well-balanced stats, too. That's another thing. We talked about his stats being half a mana down, but honestly, if I'm going to be half a mana down, I would probably rather have a 2/4 than any other stat configuration. Yeah. Probably for a guy I want to live on the board for a while, I probably like it better than even a 3/3.
Yeah, I do, too.
Yeah. Cool. All right, next up, Dragon's Breath. This is a 5 mana cost spell, sort of. It says deal 4 damage, so that by itself isn't great, but it's got the ability text that we've seen on a lot of other cards as set. Costs 1 less for each minion that died this turn. So, it's great that mages have more direct damage, not that they needed it. I kind of like that it starts off being inefficient, but there are plenty of conditions in which it can be efficient. Obviously, if you're playing stuff we've talked about in other decks, like AoE is really where this is going to shine for Mage. Although if you're playing a weenie deck, it's going to tend to do pretty well there too. I mean, even if you just trade one of your minions for one of their minions, suddenly it's a 3 mana cost, deal 4 damage, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, the trouble is, I don't know, there aren't many weenie decks, and Mage, the closest one is Mech Mage, right? And he doesn't really want to be trading on his turns. He just wants to be punching face on his turn.
That's true. There's things like, what's it called? Violet Teacher? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that gives the token every time you play a spell?
Yeah, I've been starting to see some folks run that card in a variety of decks, especially spell-heavy decks, and that does tend to create lots of little 1/1s that can ram into somebody. I mean, so, I would say you might want to put both in a deck if you're really trying to make use of this in constructed.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts, because I'm not a fan at all. I think I would almost always rather have Frostbolt, right? It's 2 mana for 3 damage and a freeze, which to me is as good as 4 damage with the Mage Hero power.
Yeah.
Or Flame Cannon, which is 2 mana, 3 mana less to deal 4 damage. You just lose the option to choose who it's going to hit. But like we've talked so many times, there's so many ways to manipulate that to hit what you want. That's not as big of a drawback as 3 extra mana to me. This card asks way too much, I think, for Mage. If this was like, right, if this was, I don't know, what class, like maybe a Paladin or something, like, okay, maybe that could work.
Yeah,
Mage has so many good options already.
Yeah, and Warlock's another one where I've been playing my Imp Lock deck, which is lots of cards that just make lots of imps and then lots of cards that take advantage of it. This would go real well there, but you're right, in Mage there's not as many opportunities. The AoE like Flame Strike will tend to lower it, so if you wanted to Flame Strike to clear off the weaker guys and then use this to just pick off like his one big baddie or something, that would work.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a stretch.
All right, so it's not awful, right? But we're not even talking vanilla curve, right? This has got to be less than 3.
Yeah, that's probably true. For Arena especially, it's going to be hard to harness. Also, I don't like that when you're behind, this thing just doesn't do any good, because the thinking there is that when you're behind, that probably means that your opponent's picking off all of your minions on their turn, meaning you're having a hard time getting things to stick. And in order to trade minions, for you to choose to trade minions, you have to be the one attacking on your turn in order to get the cost reduction here. So if you're behind, this thing just gets that much worse. And we need cards that help you when you're behind, not that get worse when you're behind.
Yep. Totally agreed.
So, yeah, 2.
2? All right. Constructed, I mean, I'm not inclined to go higher than that, but are you sold on something higher?
If I saw a lot of weenie synergy, like you were saying, I think I'd give it a higher score, but I could see sticking with the 2 for Constructed as well.
All right, let's stick with 2, and then you can disavow me later if you find a deck that works.
Fair enough.
All right, Paladin decks. Woo, Paladin is one of my favorite classes right now, so let's talk about them. Dragon Consort. Man, I'm getting all the good cards again, Scott. I must have manipulated this deck ahead of time, or this list ahead of time or something.
Don't worry, that's going to change on the next class.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. Good. Then I don't feel so bad. Dragon Consort. It's a 5-cost 5/5 dragon with a battle cry. The next dragon you play costs 2 less. Hunter owned the Death Rattle deck, right? Paladins own the Dragon deck, and this card is basically the reason of that. This card has value that is absolutely, ready for it, Scott? Off the charts in the Dragon deck. Off the charts. At worst, it's a 5/5 for 5 mana, right? But it's so much more than that. It means getting Nefarian, Cro-Magus, or Alexstrasza on the very next turn. 6, right? And some of those need a coin. Nefarian and Alexstrasza need a coin. But Cro-Magus, dropping those guys on turn 6 is a crazy tempo advantage that you just, like, Druid is the only other class that can get this kind of tempo advantage. It's crazy.
Yeah, I normally don't care too much about lowering the cost of cards that we could cast anyway, but lowering, like, being able to actually bring out something really, really big ahead of curve, that is where the real power is, in my opinion. So you need to have this thing in hand on turn 5, drop it on turn 5, and then if you have a bigger dragon in the wings that you're ready to follow up with, yeah, it gets pretty bananas and hard to deal with.
Yeah, I'm running a deck with Cro-Magus, Alexstrasza, Nefarian, Volcanic Drake, Draconic Crusher, and pretty much one of those is always in my hands by the time turn 5 runs around, so I can usually drop one of those down the very next turn. And man, getting Nefarian down the next turn, so you have an 8/8 on the board next to your 5/5, and then 2 new spells in your hand, like, it's crazy powerful.
Yeah,
so,
I'm in.
And the most fun, the reason I like it most is it's fun. Like, this is the sort of thing where you pull off those combos that you can tell stories about, and I just love that.
Yeah, it's true. And,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and just being able to draw into a dragon, even if you don't have one when you cast them, that's fine. Draw one later; it'll be cheaper. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of crazy. I didn't think about this when I first saw the card, but it's that bonus lasts forever until you play a dragon. It's not that turn or, the next turn. It's just, hey, till you play a dragon, it's 2 less.
Yeah, this is the first, I'm trying to make sure this is true. This is the first card of its type that can have an ongoing effect that for a while you don't even necessarily see, right? Because
Yeah.
at least with Emperor Thorson, he's changing the value of the cards in your hand, and you're looking at that the whole time, reminded about it. And here, you may just forget about it, and then you draw Dragon, you're like, oh, it's like Christmas, he's cheaper, that's great.
Yeah. So, Scott, when I'm looking at this guy, how off my rocker would I have to be to look at it like a 3-cost 5/5? Is that just madness?
Yeah, because you can't cast him on turn 3. I mean, if you're just talking about value, I see what you're doing there, but it is conditional on having another dragon that you draw after. Saying he's a 3-cost 5/5 implies that you can play him on turn 3, which you can't do. You know, he doesn't help you get himself out sooner. But if you're just looking at it from a pure value perspective, then I see where you're going with that.
All right. So how high of a score can I talk you into, buddy?
Well, the problem is in Arena, I just don't know that you're going to be able to reliably know that you're going to have dragons coming in that deck.
Yeah, that's going to be really hard. With how many cards there already are and how few of them are dragons, the likelihood of just seeing other dragons is not great, and getting good dragons is even lower.
Absolutely, and I don't know how it weights. I feel like it weights class cards a little higher than of any given class card. I feel like you're more likely to get one of those than any given neutral card, which means you might see a disproportionately high percentage of these, and I think that might be a bit of a trap, if so.
Yeah, well, they chain together, Scott. Keep dropping them, and then they're really a 3 or a 5/5 for 3.
Yeah, that's true. And hey, if it's like turn 5 and you're seeing your first one, maybe pick one up and hope you'll get another couple dragons over the course of the game. But when we talked about combos, I think a couple episodes ago and some of the percentages, I don't know, man. I mean, I think you need more than at least a couple dragons, like way more than that for this to be worth it. I think you need to be in the 6+ range of all the dragons in your entire deck for something like this to be reliable.
Yeah, let's see. I'm counting on my dragons right now. I got 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so I'm running 15 dragons in my Dragon Paladin deck, and I always have dragons, but even then I sometimes only have one. So if you're running anything in Arena. Okay, so are we saying like a 2 in Arena, you think? Is it below average?
I think so, because I view this like a lot of these cards where it's half a mana off, which lowers it a point, and the ability is not likely to fire in Arena at all.
All right. I'll give you a 2. But in exchange, Scott, I want a 5 for Constructed, because this card is amazing in a Dragon Paladin deck.
Yeah, 5 is a tough sell, but... All right, well, let's talk about this for just a second.
Okay.
The only thing, like the only downsides there are, and if this doesn't sway you, fine. 1, when you play him, he is just an undercosted minion. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're not like bringing down Dr. Boom with the 7/7 and 2/1/1s that do all these other things when they die. You are just bringing an overcosted minion onto the board.
Sure.
And you'll never recoup that if the game ends soon or if you just don't have another dragon to play. And now I realize in a dragon deck you're very likely to, but I'm just saying you might not. So does that do anything to dissuade you from your 5?
Not really, Scott. Like in Arena, absolutely. But in Constructed, I mean, I've probably played 40 games with my Dragon Paladin deck, and I've never had this card not perform when I've drawn it.
All right.
And I can think of at least 5 games where it got me Cro-Magus or Nefarian on the board on turn 6. And that tempo swing was just crazy. Because either they blew their removal on my 5/5 because they were scared, or they had to save the removal for the big guys, and then my 5/5 was just doing damage each turn.
All right, man, I'm sold. I got your back.
All right, good man. All right, let's see what card you got. Bring it. Where's your 5, Scott? Huh?
Well, it's 5 mana cost.
Okay.
All right, Solemn
That's
Vigil.
something.
5 mana cost, draw 2 cards. Well, so that's like a very overcosted Arcane Intellect. And then it's got the text, cost 1 less for each minion that died this turn. Well, I can say this about it. You said you wanted to see that ability in a Paladin deck, and here we go.
Yeah. I mean, so I really meant the direct damage. But I mean, paladins don't really get tons of card advantage. I'm trying to think of good card like blessing or their divine favor. Like as they have that, and they have whatever the big
lay on hands.
Yeah.
Well, and there's blessing of wisdom, which I think is a power horse.
That's true. Actually, I would agree with that.
I mean, it's not high impact, but it can draw a bunch of cards in a game, and it's versatility. Like I've just today I used it offensively, meaning defensively. So somebody dropped a minion on the board that I couldn't kill, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just drop a Blessing of Wisdom on it, and then I'm drawing 3-4 cards because they keep attacking me with it.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts on this one, right? If you do one trade where you kill their guy with your own guy and they both die, you're basically getting Arcane Intellect.
Right.
In a class that doesn't really, I would say Mage has better card draw, right? Like I would not expect Arcane Intellect in a Paladin deck, so that's kind of a cool perk.
Okay.
And in a deck that has every single Paladin deck, right, is running the Equality Consecrate combo.
Mm-hmm.
I think similar to Mage, like we were talking about with Dragon's Breath, they have a disproportionate chance of getting value out of this effect compared to most classes.
Yeah, especially they also have a bunch of 1/1s that they can sacrifice.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. So this isn't all to say that I love this card, but I don't hate it, right? Like when I first looked at it, I like shuddered and looked away, just like, oh no, this card. But the more I thought about it and the more I tried playing with it, I think it's actually pretty decent.
You know, I've had the opposite journey. I started off being like, yeah, sweet. My notes even say, yes, please. But I've soured a little bit on the cost 1 less for each minion to die this turn, just because, again, when you're behind, that mechanic is fighting against you rather than helping you.
Yeah.
And that's rough.
That is very true.
But you say you've played with this.
Yeah. I've never, right, like I almost always pay 3 for it, right? It's very rare that I pay less than that, and it's pretty rare that I pay the full 5 for it. I think I top decked it once, right, and I had to pay 5 for it. But that was about it. It was always just like, yeah, paying 3 or 4 or 2 for draw 2 cards, and it always just felt like filler, I guess. Like it was never gonna win me the game, and it didn't always lose me the game. I don't know. To me, it felt very much like a 3. You know, it's like a Chillwind Yeti. Like, man, but Chillwind Yeti, I'm even happy to draw. Maybe it's a 2.
To me, well,
how low are you?
To me, if this is just on par with Arcane Intellect, I personally wouldn't put it above a 3. And if you're saying 3 is your best case scenario, but you're often paying 4 or 5 for it, then I would say it's worse than a 3, and it goes down to like a 2.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm often paying 4 and 5. I'm mostly paying 3 and occasionally 4 and occasionally 2, and then very rarely.
Okay, so you
5.
are paying 2 sometimes. All right, yeah, then maybe a 3. If we're talking arena anyway.
Sorry. Yeah, I played this in arena, and I think it's probably a little better there just because bodies kind of win the day in arena. You're likely just to have bodies on both sides of the board most of the game. So, all right. So
yeah, that works.
I'll say, all right. So we'll say 3 for arena.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, constructed, I'm not sure. It might even be worse than constructed.
Yeah, I don't know. And I wish I had played with this thing, but I haven't. It would be interesting to see because I had a token paladin deck that I got to rank 1 with. I mean, just shy of legendary over Christmas time. And that deck would have loved this because it, was the quartermasters and the all that stuff. And lots of little guys on purpose. And I do think that in those kinds of decks, like if you're running the Haunted Creepers, just decks with things that want to die, like a token or swarm type deck, that seems like where this thing's most at home. You couple that with consecration and or quality consecration. I bet you're paying 1 and sometimes 0 for this pretty often.
All right, and since constructed score is the decks that want it most, I mean, do we want to leave it at a 3?
Yeah.
I don't know if I really feel comfortable with 4.
Yeah, let's leave it as a 3 for constructed.
All right.
But we'll play with it.
And actually, I would love to hear if any listeners have been using this and constructed and have success. Send us your deck and let us know how it's going. Because I can't get off the Dragon Paladin deck yet, but I would love to try it out after I.
Yeah, I will say if it in a deck it does tend to perform down in the 0, 1, and 2 range pretty reliably, that says to me it probably is a 4 in those conditions.
Yeah.
But if it just feels like you're probably gonna have to work too much for it, and a lot of times if you top deck, unless you've got stuff on the board that you were gonna sacrifice anyway, if your hand's empty and you draw this thing, you're paying 5. And I don't know, maybe under those circumstances you're glad to spend 5 mana to have 2 cards instead of the 1 card you just top decked. But I don't know. I still think 3 is probably right.
Yeah, that feels good.
All right, you ready for your bad card?
Almost. Before we get into that, Scott, I just have to make note that I feel like I'm a British podcaster today, because I've got my teapot sitting next to me and my nice cup of tea, and I'm pouring tea and drinking. Like, I feel like this is how they do it over on the Instance with like Terpster, right? I'm sure they're over there with their tea and stuff. I should probably get some sort of crumpet. I think that's like a cookie or something, right?
Are you drinking Earl
Maybe
Grey?
A biscuit? No, chamomile. That's kind of British, right? I don't know.
All right,
I tried. So yeah, I'm just sick, Scott, and I'm sure my voice just sounds awful.
actually you sound fine, but we've been juggling being sick, you and I. It's crazy.
We have. I feel like we're probably connected through some universal, like, I don't know, sickness link. Just transfers between us.
You complete me, Josh.
You complete me. Oh, man. All right, let's talk about the newest card with the weirdest, creepiest golden art around, the Twilight Whelp. He has a 1-cost, 2/1. Oh, boy, we've seen that a lot. So what's its perk? Battle Cry. If you're holding a dragon, gain +2 health. So it'd be a 2/3 for 1. I don't like Dragon Priest very much at all, just in general. So I'm already a bit down on this card because I don't want to be running a lot of dragons in my Priest deck. I think I'd almost always be happier dropping either Northshire Cleric or Light Warden on turn 1, right? At least those, like, to me, at least those are lightning rods that they're going to burn their coin and removal to get rid of. This guy, they're just like, I'll trade him next turn.
Yeah, he feels really conditional to me. All right, let me put it this way. I built a Dragon Priest deck. It was actually less emphasis on the Priest and more emphasis on like the buffing, but I used the dragon that you can cast spells on and it gets bigger. And it was fun, and I won like the first 3 games, and I think I lost like, I don't know, 5 games in a row after that, so I shelved it for now. But I didn't have this guy in it. I'm not interested in him.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, this is not a good sign for a score. The deck that wants it most didn't even want it.
And admittedly, I wasn't like super mega heavy dragons. I had probably 8 to 10 dragons in that deck compared to your like 15 on the Paladin deck.
Yeah.
Dragons was more of a minor sub theme, and I've been having some luck with more minor themes with mechs and dragons and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Having to go heavy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dragon decks definitely don't seem to be doing as well as mech decks, which I mean, I guess is expected, right? Mech got 123 cards or whatever in their set, and this was 20.
Right. And I expect we'll see more dragons down the road, maybe sprinkled throughout the classes, and probably mostly as neutral minions. And so I'm betting that dragon decks will probably grow in power a little faster than mech decks will, because I think they're probably going to back populate it a little.
I hope so. Can I please get some dragon equivalent of Earthen Ring Farseer decks with my Dragon Paladin deck, and there's no dragon that you can drop early that kind of helps you keep going for a while.
Oh, that's true. You could drop this guy and take out two of the aggro guys coming at you, though.
Well, yeah, if I was playing Priest, but then I wouldn't have my, 5-score rated Dragon Consort.
Fair enough. Okay, you meant with your Paladin.
Yeah, yeah, with my Paladin deck. I don't got time for Priest Dragon deck, Scott, with this garbage in it.
Yeah.
This guy, right? So in Arena, I'll give him a 1, right? He's a body. And he's actually, I mean, he's a 2/1 for 1. That's not awful for Arena. You're just happy to get someone down on turn 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 0 awful, but it is 1 awful, in my opinion. Normally you pay 1 mana for a 2/1 or a 1/2, and then you get some upside. Mm-hmm. In this case, the upside requires that you're holding a dragon, which in Arena you're probably not, which means you're probably not getting the upside at all.
Yeah, and it's in Arena on turn 1. The other dragons, like the Dragon Consort and stuff, it gives you 5 turns to get a dragon in your hand. And this guy's like, did you start with a dragon? Nope, sorry, too late.
Yeah, it's a good point. You have to hold a dragon out of your mulligan to expect to be able to proc this
This
thing.
guy
Why would you do
and
that?
a dragon. So that's 2/3 of your mulligan.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
Yeah. So all right. So you said you didn't even want it in your deck. Does that mean it's a 0 for constructed?
No, I mean, he's got a body. I mean, there's a lot of cards that you can, well, not a lot, but there are cards that you put down of like spells that have virtually no effect or units without a body at all. I think he's very subpar.
All right. So what score are you thinking?
Yeah, 1 I think is fine. All I'm saying is not a 0.
Okay. That's a deal. I'll go with 1. All right. What's your priest card, buddy?
So constructed card. Hold on. Sorry. I was saying 1 for arena. Were you saying 1 for constructed?
I was actually sorry. Yeah, 1 for arena. What are you saying for constructed then?
Yeah, I'd say probably a 1.
Yeah.
And especially because it doesn't even play well with the other card, which we're about to talk about, which is Resurrect. Like, if you resurrect this thing, if you cast this thing, he's going to die. And then if you resurrect him, he's going to come back as a 2/1, which is about the worst thing that could happen. So if you're using the next card, you want to use this one even less.
Yeah. There is, like, target dummy is really the only, I know Wisp is really the only other things you'd be sadder coming back from Resurrect.
Yeah, well, I think I might rather have a target dummy, to
That's
be completely honest. I mean, 0/2 taunt in some circumstances could be much better than a 2/1.
Fair enough.
All right. So next card. You and I, we had a slugfest over this one.
We did.
And I think I may be conceding that you were right on it, for the record.
Good. Yes, this is why I delayed the podcast a week. I was like, give Scott more time. He'll fall in line.
I did. I built a deck, kind of not around this, but I had it very much in mind when I was building. It was that dragon buff deck I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's Resurrect is a 2-cost spell. Summon a random friendly minion that died this game. So it's one of yours because it's friendly minion, but it is random, so you don't get to choose what it is. It also, to my understanding, affects like token creatures. So it's a little rough playing like Knight of the Naru and then getting the 1/2 Light Wardens out. Because if those die, I mean, there are worse things to bring back in a priest deck, but it's not necessarily what you want. In order for this thing to be good, you want to be getting back like kind of the dream scenario is on turn 3 you play an injured Blade Master, and on turn 4 they just like burn 2 cards or something to kill it, and then the next turn you just spend half your turn bringing this back and then something else, or
And it comes back as a 4/7, right?
Because it's battle cries that it hurts itself, and Resurrect doesn't activate the battle cry. So Resurrect does particularly well with cards that have negative battle cries, and in fact it's particularly weak with cards with positive battle cries, like say that dragon that we just looked at, the Twilight Whelp.
Yeah. So when you were building your dragon priest deck, did you have trouble finding minions that you wanted to run that played nice with this?
No, not too much. I just started my curve a little higher. I did play the Northshire Clerics, but I told myself when I put them in, it's like, well, I'll let myself cast them on turn 1 if it seems like the thing to do in the circumstance. And there were actually some cases when I told myself I'm going to hold it till later in the game when I can like play it and heal something at the same time. And that also implies there's other things on the board, so they're going to have to like choose what they kill rather than just, it being a no-brainer to kill it. But there were a lot of cases when my opponent would play like a 1/2, or I'm sorry, like a 2/1, and I'm like, well, this is pretty perfect. So then I would just go ahead and drop the thing. And there were a number of things like that where I would choose to play. But anyway, so I had that, and I had the Light of Naru that would bring the Light Warden, although you have to be a few turns in before something's taken 4 damage and you want to use the Light of Naru on it. Overall, though, and I did not use an Injured Blade Master in that deck. When I started building it, I was expecting to, but I didn't. But I had a lot of like 3, 4, and 5 mana cost, like minions and dragons, and then I had some stuff on the higher end of the spectrum. And man, it went pretty well, honestly. I was very rarely disappointed by what I got back. I think once I got back my my Northshire Cleric, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to make the most of this, and I ended up drawing 3 cards off of it.
Nice.
Yeah, because that's the biggest. Northshire Cleric is just, it's flat out undercosted. It just is. But it's meant to be like a signature card for the class. They want you to put 2 in your deck, but they, of course, only let you have 2, and that's how they keep it from being too powerful. I think in Blizzard's mind, that's a card that gives Priest a lot of its flavor, and they just kind of expect it to be in all the decks. kind of like Fireball for Mage. I mean, not necessarily every deck, but a lot of them, and that's okay. So being able to resurrect it, you are sort of getting more than a 1 mana cost minion.
Okay, nice. I agree with everything you said, Scott. Right, in the right late game control style deck, I mean, this card is pretty much guaranteed value. I think the nightmare scenario, right, is against Mage or Shaman who are using Polymorph and Hex and killing those things, and if those things comes back, because you can't really plan against that. You're just kind of hosed.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point.
But I still feel like, because it's only 2 mana, right? If it's 3 mana, I would be very wary. But there's very few minions that I'm running that I would not be fine paying 2 mana for. Like you said, like Northshire Cleric, especially in Priest, right? They're running Northshire Cleric, maybe the Zombie Chow for weak minions. Other than that, they're pretty much running big bodies. I feel pretty good about my chances with this one.
Yeah, I just, I do encourage people. So here's the downside. And here's why I started off kind of sour on it, is you need to make sure that you've played enough minions and had enough minions die. Like, you don't ever want to sacrifice a minion on purpose. You have to wait for them to die in their due course. And you want to look and make an educated call that the average is sort of above 2 mana cost. Because to me, if you're getting a 2 mana cost minion back with this, you've still sort of come out at a loss, because you didn't get to choose what that unit is, and you didn't get to play them at a time that was most advantageous, right? Yep. Like, I'm going to play the Knife Juggler now because the Knife Juggler now is going to, work out super well. You're like, well, I'm going to play something, and I'm going to hope it works out. But it's kind of, you can't exactly put a firm strategy around that. So in my mind, you really should be aiming to get like a 3 mana cost or higher and have at least a 50-50 odds of getting that to go for it.
All right, so now that you're on board, Scott, what kind of score are we looking at?
It's hard to say with Arena because I only played it in Constructed. And
yeah,
if you play this card in such a way that like you're always tossing it back on the draw, like you're always mulliganing this card, I could see going with a 3, because what you're saying is if you always toss it back, you're probably going to draw it later game. Even if you get it early, you hold on to it. And once some 3, 4, and 5 mana cost stuff ends up dying in the late game, this is likely to make a big difference for you.
Yeah. All right. I agree. Constructed 3 as well? Or are you thinking even higher after playing with it?
It was performing pretty strong, and I had lower ratings. Josh and I actually, we had this probably the longest like back and forth of any card, and I was saying it should be low, but now I might go for a 4 for Constructed.
All right, I'm seizing the moment, Scott. You may regret this in the morning, but right now it's a 4.
So do you agree with that?
Yeah, I actually do. I think that's fair. I also haven't played it in Arena, but it seems like it would be just fine there. The one downside in Arena is sometimes you get stuck with minions you really don't want, like Stone Tusk Boar or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I think it's pretty rare that you get something that's that bad.
I will say a thing to watch out for in Arena are cards that are split across multiple bodies, or cards that generate little token guys, or Paladin decks, because all of those are likely... Well, okay, sorry, this wouldn't be in a Paladin deck, so forget I said that.
But like Razorfen Hunter...
Exactly. It's not the end of the world, but things with smaller bodies for beneficial battle cries, or just things with small tokens, because those tokens die, and they're going to be the things that die early. That's going to kind of bring down the average of what you're likely to get with this thing. So if you do draft this in Arena, I would say look back on the cards you've drafted so far, make sure you don't have too much of that, and then be wary of drafting those kind of cards moving forward.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's look at Rogue. Ooh, I'm excited to talk about this card because you showed me the good fun of this card, Scott. Gang up, 2 cost spell, common. Choose a minion. Shuffle 3 copies of it into your deck. So just to be clear, choose any minion that's on the board. Doesn't have to be yours. You put 3 copies of it into your deck, and that's it. You're not drawing a card. You're not getting 3 copies in your hand. They're just going in your deck. You taught me that this card was fun in the deck that you played. You played a mill rogue deck against me, but I'm still not afraid of it, right? It feels like a waste of mana most games. You may never draw those cards. You may draw those cards instead of something else that would have actually helped more. it's so hard to get just a feeling for like the tangible benefit of this card, right? It's very nebulous.
Yeah, it's hard to tell if this is intended to be a trap card being one that new players may think is good but isn't, and is sort of meant to differentiate good from bad players, or if they're like, oh man, the really good players are going to see the potential here. And Mill Deck is the only place where this is really at home, and I think everybody's learned the Mill Deck wasn't good. Like Josh, you beat me. I think we played 2 games with the Mill Deck, 3. Yeah. And you beat me all of them, I think.
Yeah. But you got close most of the times, and it honestly felt like this card. Because I think one of them you dropped like 3 oracles.
I believe. And that's what it's for. You have to use it on the Cold Light oracles in that deck, yeah.
I don't know. It's really hard, right? It's one of those cards you just can't tell if it's helping, right? Because when you drew your second Cold Light oracle, was that because you had played Gang Up, or would you have just drawn your second one anyways?
Right, good point. All right, so let me ask you this, Josh. All right, you're at the fair or you're at the carnival,
okay?
And I'm one of the carnies, and I got a little booth here, and I'm calling you over.
I've run away and called the authorities.
Boy, do I have a deal for you. All right, this spell right here. All you got to do is have a card. You cast the card. It costs 2 mana. So 2 mana and a card. And the ability does nothing except rebuild your deck a little. What do you think? Are you in, buddy? Are you in?
Yeah, this sounds exactly like what someone would try to sell me at a carnival. Yes, you nailed it. This definitely sounds like I'm being had. Because if I remember correctly, what did you value a card at? Was it 1.5 mana?
No, I actually value it quite higher. It's hard, and I'm constantly reevaluating it, but I still put it at like 2.5 to 3 mana, give or take.
So this is roughly the equivalent of 5 mana if you're not counting the card. Like if you just had an extra hero power that was said 5 mana, do nothing, except rebuild your deck a little. No way. I would never click that button.
Right. I mean this, and especially in an arena deck where you can't create the combos or anything. There's just, what are you going to do with this? You're just wasting a card draw and some mana. And what everybody has to understand, and I hope all your listeners understand this does nothing for you. It might improve the average quality of your future draws by a little bit, but I mean, it's not like you didn't have any of those cards in the first place, or your opponent didn't, because it was on the board. I mean, it's just a card. It's not like turning it into something like you draw one of these and you win the game, right? Yeah. It's just turning it into the best minion that you could point at the time you cast it. And so, yeah, this isn't good. In fact, this is very, very bad.
So in Arena, I'm willing to say that this is the worst card you could ever pick.
Even worse than Poison Seeds.
Yeah.
Which is saying something.
Yeah, that is the greatest insult Scott knows how to give. So listeners know that is serious.
Yeah. So in all truthfulness, I do not give zeros very often. I mean, to me, 0 means this thing is honest to God worthless. Don't play it. It's junk, and this thing is junk in Arena.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd give it -1 if we had a scale that did that, but 0 is fine by me.
Yeah.
Is it any better?
F plus.
Is it any better in Constructed? I mean, in Mill Deck, it did maybe do some work.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that deck sucks, but in that deck, it's what enables the deck. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. And there's a Druid version and a Rogue version, and I think they'll still continue to get marginally better over time, as the game introduces cards that just happen to work with it. Cold Light Oracle is huge. In Druid, you got things like Recycle, and there's another one too, Naturalize, that, kill any minion and then have them draw 2 cards.
But even then, those cards are guaranteed effective at the strategy. This guy, you need Cold Light Oracle on the board. It needs to not have been killed already, and then you need to be able to play it. Like, oh man.
Yeah, there's some others like King Mukla. It's not the worst with, and which you run in that deck because you give them bananas to fill up their hand, and then you make them draw cards that they can't actually keep. And it also works with Anti-Keelbot, which is also run in those decks.
All right, Scott, I gotta point out that your defense of this card boiled down to, and this is a quote, "It's not the worst with." I'm not going above a 2, buddy. There's no way.
All right. Yeah, I had said a 3, and the thinking was that with the 3 that it just enabled those decks in a way that they weren't really enabled otherwise. But they're still not good decks, so yeah, sure, fine. 2.
All right.
You got me.
All right. It's a 2 for now. Maybe when there are more cards that it can play well with, and you're almost guaranteed to have one of them on the board, sure, I could get talked up to a 3.
Yeah. All right.
All right. What do you got?
Next up, Dark Iron Skulker. This is a 5 mana cost 4/3. So he's 2 mana overcosted. So his ability had better be good. Battlecry. Deal 2 damage to all undamaged enemy minions. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad. So that will tend to kill token decks, just like all of the little tokens will just die, right? Because they're all 1/1s. So those will just get wiped off the table. Any minions that your opponent casts last turn will typically be undamaged, and so those will tend to take 2 damage. Not necessarily die, but get weakened. I think if you're expecting to cast this guy on turn 5, that may work out, but it also may not. So I would argue if you're going to get the most of him, you need to hold him for a particularly opportune moment.
Yeah.
And that means that you might not want to be betting on him as the 5-drop in your curve.
Yeah, he's kind of like Lotheb in that way. Like, you could drop him on 5, but you should probably just wait for the right time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, yeah, I feel like this guy is here to give rogues more answers to aggro, right? Because he's great, I think, against something like Zoo, even any sort of the Paladin decks. Even chopping down 1 Raptor, makes him worth it in my books. If he was, come in 4/3, deal 2 damage, sure, I'd be on board.
If he kills a 2 mana cost minion, I would say he's profited at that point, because that unit costs them not only 2 mana, but also costs them a card.
Yeah.
And your card is sort of invested in the 4/3 here, so the 2 mana for the ability is just a bonus.
Yeah, I agree. To me, he feels a little bit like the Stampeding Kodo. Just with a whole lot more upside. In the right scenarios, it's basically a Consecrate with the body attached to it. And Consecrate is a 4 mana and a card.
I like the Consecrate analogy. That's pretty good. They have to be undamaged, but that's not crazy, especially if your rogues a lot of time keep the boards pretty tidied up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they're known for, like a lot of Miracle Rogue and even Mill Rogue. Those are very control archetypes that tend to keep the board clean.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the board's clean, then all the minions on the board will be new, which means they'll be undamaged.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't think it's unreasonable to believe that a lot of times you'll have something on the board that you can use this and then trade profitably with it. So even if they drop, like a 4 minion, sure, it's not going to kill it. But I think a lot of times you can do this and then trade with it or something like that.
And then Oprah comes out and says, free backstabs for everyone.
Perfect. I love it. Oprah's a rogue. It's messed up.
Yeah, and one last thing. I said it's good against token decks, but I also think it's pretty good against aggro decks, because they tend to play creatures that only have 1 toughness and 1 life, and that can include things like rage. Was it not Raging Worgen? The stealthy, the 2/1 stealth for 1.
Oh, yeah, he's a Worgen of some kind.
Yeah, that Worgen guy. I forget what his name is, but.
There you go. Worgen Infiltrator.
Worgen Infiltrator, right. So, this is a pretty good anti-aggro card, I think, as well. You'll still take damage from a lot of these things, but you can clear them off the board very efficiently and then get back on offense yourself.
Yeah. All right, so what are we talking? This sounds like it's better than Vanilla Test.
Yeah, I think so under most circumstances. He is kind of expensive. He's a little bit of a liability in that regard. A 5 mana cost card that we're saying you don't necessarily want to cast on turn 5, that does start to get a little painful, but I would put him above average. I think even in Arena, I'd put him at a 4.
Yeah, I'm on board with 4 for Arena and Constructed.
Yeah, and I think Constructed, I haven't played with him in Constructed, but my theory crafting part of my brain says, he's probably worth a 4 in the right deck that wants him.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's look at Shaman cards next. 'Cause here's a card that I wanted to be excited about, but I'm just really not. Lava Shock. 2-cost spell, rare. Deal 2 damage. Unlock your overloaded mana crystals. So I'm still just so hooked on Mech Shaman, which is our current deck on the show. I haven't built an overload deck, because I started to build one and I just got unimpressed, right? Overload deck just isn't there yet to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think?
I have an Overload deck. I was running it on ladder. It seemed fine. I mean, it was about 50-50, give or take. Sometimes I played this thing and it was, let's be clear, 2 mana to deal 2 damage is not good, right?
Yeah.
Even Priest has a card that's 1 mana for dealing 2 damage to whatever it wants, and Priest is not good at this. So you really do need to be unlocking overloaded mana crystals in order for this to be worthwhile. And I had turns I played it when it was just an overcasted spell, and I had other turns where I'm like, holy crap, I just freed up like 5 mana. That was amazing.
Now, in those situations, if you're looking honestly, did you make the best decisions, or did you use your overload cards because you knew you could unlock them?
No, I think they provided some genuine value. Like, I recall one turn, or one of the games, on one turn, I cast a bunch of stuff with overload, purposefully leaving 2 mana unlocked at the beginning of the next turn, where I cast this and then all my direct damage spells and went for the kill. So, he thought that I was going to be like locked down, and I did, in fact. I mean, I got a bunch of extra value because I'm casting all these overload cards. But, over 2 turns, I was able to get just all this extra value, and I did go in for the kill. And that one anecdote jumped to mind, but it wasn't the only one. It wasn't like that was some rare circumstance. There were elements of that in quite a few games, not every game. I would not call this an overperformer. I would not even call this a strong, consistent performer, but it does about what I'd expect, which is sometimes not much, and sometimes it does some real work.
Yeah, so the weird thing to me when I'm looking at this is that you really have to play it on later turns, right? Because you need 2 mana open, which you had mentioned, so you can't really play this and get value at earliest turn 3, right, if you have 1 locked. But anything more than that, I mean, you have to be playing it late game, where 2 damage just isn't usually that big of a deal.
Yeah, there was one game when I played this on turn 2 to kill like a Whirling Zap-O-Matic and, against another Shaman. And so that was, frankly, I was glad to have it in my hand. And yes, I overpaid for it, but it was also the right answer. And I was very happy it was there.
Okay.
All the other games, you're right. You're waiting until turn 5, 6, 7 to cast this. And that means if it's in your opening hand, you should probably toss it back because you're not going to win it anytime soon. And honestly, if you don't draw it, fine, you're drawing your other cards that are good.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want all the cards that are in your hand to be good in the situation. And if the situation is the early game, that is not this.
Yeah. So, it's interesting, right? So let's look at Arena. Your other options are Lightning Bolt, which is deal 3 damage for basically 2 mana because it's 1 cost and overload 1. Silence a minion and deal 1 damage to it for 1. A Frost Shock, deal 1 damage and freeze it for 1. Are you happy to have this card in Arena? I mean, it's still removal, I guess, in Arena. Arena needs removal.
Really. No, yeah. I mean, I'd rather have, if I don't think I'm going to have that much overload, I would rather have Lightning Bolt. And if I'm going to invest early in a overload synergy card, it's probably not going to be this. It's going to be Unbound Elemental, which is really not, it's only half a mana off.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to trigger. This, I feel like it pays more of a cost premium for what it does.
All right, so we're looking at 2 or lower than 2, you think?
I'd put it at 2 myself.
Yeah, I think 2 is safe because it's still, like you said, it's there when you need to get rid of the Whirling Zap-O-Matic. It's still deal 2 damage.
Yeah.
All right, for Constructed, there is an Overload deck. It's just kind of boring. But, this is great in an Overload deck, right? Like you said, just for those moments.
Yeah, it's fine. And I had the Overload deck. It wasn't a great deck, but this was a fine performer in it. I didn't feel like it was dead weight.
Sounds like a 3 to me.
Felt like a 3 to me. Yep.
All right, cool. What else we got?
All right, here's a good one. Fireguard Destroyer, a 4 mana cost minion. It's a 3/6 with an overload of 1 and a battle cry of gain 1 to 4 attack. So this is the first one of these that we've seen, I think, where its size it's like a crackle, but its size gets bigger instead of dealing random damage. And so just to break down the mana cost a little bit, Ignoring the overload for just a second, a 3/6 for 4 is actually right on the vanilla curve. So you're essentially trading and those are fairly well balanced stats. Like, I'll take a 4/5. I will also take a 3/6 and not feel bad about it. So overload for 1 to me is well worth the battle cry of gaining 1 to 4 attack on this guy. I mean, when you pay 4 mana on turn 4 and he comes out as a 7/6, that can really skew some games. And it's like the Whirling Zap-O-Matic, where they have to have an answer to it or they're going to hurt.
Yeah. And that's the thing to me is like 7/6 is incredible. A 4/6 for 4 isn't bad either. And that's the worst case scenario.
That's right. That is the worst case scenario, is that it's a 4/6. And it's only uphill from there. There's only a 25% chance it's going to be quote unquote that bad. And to me, all right, Josh, if I told you a 5/6 for 4 mana with an overload of 1, would you do that?
Oh, heck yes.
Yeah, as would I.
Yeah.
And this is, on average, just slightly better than that.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I would say the slight higher because of the average probably is offset by the fact that it can be silenced in my books.
I guess, yeah.
But still, yeah, I mean, even if they silence it, I guess it's still a 3/6. I mean, it's not a
This
win.
is one of the least impactful things for them to waste a silence on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you put a buff on a creature, and that's a whole card, and then they can silence that, and you've just lost a whole card, for example. Yeah.
All right, so, yeah, I mean, I'm on board. I would play as many of these in my deck as they let me.
And for what it's worth, in the Shaman, that Overload deck I did build, I mean, this guy was amazing. Like, I'm always, I don't know about you, but I'm always really glad to see Fire Elemental in my hand.
Yeah.
And the only thing I don't like about Fire Elemental is that he's expensive, but otherwise, like, if I can afford it, I'm like, sweet, this turn's going to go well. This guy was at least as strong. Like, I was at least as happy to see him, and it helped that I could play him 2 turns earlier in the game. Like, I didn't have to get so deep in the game, and he wasn't dead weight. Like, I had the option of playing him a lot sooner. And he just was highly disproportionate value whenever I'd play him. To me, he's distinctly above a 3, so he is a 4.
Yeah, I agree.
In both Arena and Constructed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in Arena, it might even, I don't want to say it's a 5, but it is a high 4 in Arena, especially, I think.
Actually, it's an interesting call because it's hard to get a unit that is just flat out better than the Arena curve, just flat out better.
Yeah.
In Arena, and he really is flat out better.
Yeah. You want to
kind
do
of
it?
A wide margin. Yeah, maybe I do, because I mean, he's got a lot of weird text on him. He's got Overload, Battle Cry, Random, blah blah blah, but he is ultimately just kind of a vanilla creature and a really big one.
Yeah, a big fatty.
Yeah.
He will munch, especially, man, that 6 health is just like, he will munch at least 2 minions. If even worst case scenario where you're just forced to like trade with him every turn. I mean,
yeah, he did. He always took out 2 guys, always.
Awesome.
Or just punch face for a bunch, and then they had to deal with them on their terms.
Yeah.
Still often throwing guys into them.
Yeah. All right. It's a 5 Arena. I love
5
it.
Arena, 4 Constructed.
All right. Here's the other card that we debated not nearly as heavily as Resurrect, Scott, but let's get on it. Warlock card, Demon Wrath, another rare spell. 3 cost, deal 2 damage to all non-demon minions. This is the card that brought my Demon Warlock deck back to the top of my playlist. It's been nothing but Demon Warlock and Dragon Paladin for the last month, or however long it's been. This makes sure for me that aggro is just a non-issue for Demon Lock decks, which was always kind of the thing I struggled with. It's tremendous value for a class that simply doesn't get no downside AoE removal. That's the thing that really sells it to me, right? If this was a Paladin card or a Mage card, sure, it'd be way worse. But Warlocks just don't get AoE that doesn't have a downside. And this is essentially as close to a no downside AoE removal Warlock is going to get. Counterpoint, Scott.
Well, if you're not playing a demon heavy deck, then it's a little bit of a liability.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of this card. I have my Imp Lock deck. It's pretty much, it's not all demons, but it's mostly demons. I run some Direwolf Alphas and a Raid Leader and some Knife Jugglers, and I think that's about it. I get nervous because Demon Wrath will kill all of those things.
Yeah.
But it is mostly demons in that deck. Maybe I should just try running it to see, but I'm scared of it. I'll be honest, I'm scared.
You should try it. You should also try swapping out a couple of those for other demons and just see how it goes.
Well, I get a lot of mileage out of those 3 cards I mentioned because, when you have a Knife Juggler out and then you attack with an Imp Gang Boss, or you, goodness, if you cast an Implosion, it like doubles the effectiveness of an Implosion when you have a Knife Juggler out. So, and same thing, like Raid Leader and Direwolf Alpha are amazing when you've just got this wall of imps.
Yeah, that is true. All right, let me ask you this, Scott. For one game, try it for me, just for me.
For you, I will do this.
All right, because I'm running a pretty demon-heavy deck, which is running more demons than I would normally run. Like, it's running stuff like Felguard, and Mistress, or not Mistress of Pain. What is the? Oh no, I actually dropped the Succubus. I forgot about that.
Yeah, she's not very good.
Yeah, I actually am running Cult Master in there for similar reasons to Knife Juggler that has worked out actually exceptionally well. He's the one card in the deck that makes me keep Demon Wrath in my hand, which makes me sad, because he will just kill that guy immediately. But the big thing to me is one of the mainstays of Demon Warlock is Nerubian Egg. It just has so much good synergy with it, with stuff like I'm totally blanking. The dude that gobbles other minions.
Oh, Void Terror?
Void Terror, thank you.
And Power Overwhelming is another good one.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I should put some Nerubian Eggs in mine, especially if I run this thing, because this will pop Nerubian Eggs.
Yeah, it's just a nice little perk to throw it out there. All right, so I agree in Arena it's not great, right? Because you're just not going to get a full Demon Lock deck. But it's still, it's decent, right? You run Hellfire sometimes in Warlock just because you need the removal. This is just kind of another option.
I'll be honest with you. I don't really run Hellfire. Maybe I should, but I don't.
So I will run it in Arena every now and then, especially if I have a very slow deck. If I just didn't get a lot of early draws, but I got a lot of late game beef, I will sometimes run Hellfire.
Huh.
But I'm not excited to pull it. But sometimes you need it.
Yeah. And in theory, this is like a Hellfire that should be better for you than for your opponent, because any demons you do have will survive the onslaught.
Yeah. Yeah, and even then, I kind of like it more than Hellfire, because a lot of times 3 damage is a little overkill. And Demon Wrath means that I possibly won't kill my own stuff quite as often.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I would give it a 2 in Arena. I don't want to go lower than that. Maybe a 1? Are you thinking a 1, Scott? Are you a terrible monster?
I haven't said a thing.
All right, sorry.
No, I could go with a 2. Given that Hellfire is probably a 3 and people run it, well, I don't know. Maybe Hellfire's a 2.
I think Hellfire is probably a 2.
Yeah, then this is probably a 2 as well.
All right. Constructed, though, I'm talking 4. Are you even anywhere near that zip code?
Sure. Yeah, in the deck that wants it, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. That was way easier than I anticipated. I'll take my boxing gloves off. All right. Man, this is going wonderfully. First, you loved Resurrect. Now, Demon Wrath is no problem. You pick any other card you want, Scott. Give it whatever score you want. You earned it, buddy.
Well, there aren't that many cards left here. In
wisely.
the past, I feel like I've always been the strong arm, and I've imposed my will on you. So this is just karma that I think, I'm not just yielding to you. I actually think that as I looked more into a lot of these cards, I think you were right.
All right. So how about this, Scott? As a way of paying you back, since you don't want to take advantage of the scores, and because we don't have a card of the week, I will declare our next card the card of the week and sing the theme song for you.
Oh, I'll take that.
Yeah? That's probably better than getting to choose your own score, huh?
I love it.
All right. I actually did not think about this at all.
No, wait, is this the first for Happy Hearthstone?
I couldn't remember. I maybe sang like the first show or the second show, but I definitely haven't sung in years. I'm sad that I'm sick, so now my amazing singing won't be heard and I won't get record deals.
You just need to do a Barry White cover.
Oh, there you go. I can dig that. All right, let's see. Oh man, this is way hard.
Yeah. You know how many of these I've had to do on the spot?
What have I been doing to these guests?
Yes.
I'm the monster.
Yes.
All right. Here goes, Scott. Card of the week It's the card of the week in the cards that has the card of the week. Da-na-na. Wee!
Hey, that's not bad.
All right. It wasn't the worst you've ever heard?
No, it wasn't the worst I've ever heard.
All right. That's all I wanted. Yeah, take that, episode 4. Whoever sang in episode 4, beat you. There you go. I don't actually know who sang in episode 4. Knowing it's probably my wife's episode, and she heard it, and it's all sad.
Ouch.
All right. So what is the card of the week, Scott?
All right. This is the Imp Gang Boss. And he is a boss indeed. He is a 3 mana cost, 2/4. So, half a mana cost over costed, which, usually isn't too bad. Whenever this minion takes damage, summon a 1/1 imp. What? Yeah. So, he's almost always going to take damage, which means he's almost always going to summon at least 1 imp. In fact, I would argue most of the time he takes 2 hits, which means he's probably going to generate 2 1/1 imps. So if you add up all that power and toughness, assuming you didn't do any growth shenanigans with Demon Heart or Demon Fire, then he's probably going to have put, when all is said and done, you will have put 4/6 worth of attack and health on the board for 3 mana.
Yeah, and in many ways with your deck, you're saying it's even better than having a 4/6 on the board because you're running stuff like Raid Leader that gets more value out of it.
Yeah. I'm that, and I had Cult Master in there too, which I had forgotten about. Of course, I have Cult Master. I did get huge mileage out of it in that deck. Yeah, man, this guy's the real deal. I don't think he's oh my god, drop down amazing, just broken or anything like that. But I think he is. To me, he's kind of like Haunted Creeper, and I know, I pushed for a 5 for Haunted Creeper, and you were like, "You are crazy, dude! It's a 1/2," and he makes a couple of 1/1s. What are you doing? But the thing is, he ends up being 3/4 for 2 mana, and I still think, especially in decks that want a lot of minions on the board and that are primed to take advantage of that, Haunted Creeper is still in a lot of decks, and he's still in a lot of decks for a reason. And nobody views him as the MVP in those decks, but the fact is we got enough cards in the card pool now that cards don't really make it in decks unless they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And so to me, this shares that quality of you're probably going to get 2 1/1s out of him over the course of his life. And he doesn't have bad stats to begin with. And the fact that he's a demon and he makes demons only helps the synergy opportunities in the Demon Warlock deck.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything. It's must-have in Demon Warlock, and I actually don't think it's really bad in any Warlock deck.
No, the demon thing is just gravy. You can ignore the demon keyword, and you're still getting... usually you're going to get about 4/6 worth of value by the time it's all said and done. Not on a single body, but that's okay, and that can be an asset. Yeah,
just for comparison, for the same mana, we like Spider Tank, which is a 3/4.
Right.
And this is a 4/6. I completely agree. And this guy is pure upside, right? There's almost no downside. The worst case scenario is that they use an ability that kills it without dealing damage. In which case you traded a card for a card, and that's not even bad. In best case scenario, you're dropping something like, you're talking about Demon Heart or Demon Fire, and you're trading this for tons of little things. I love dropping this guy and then dropping Dread Infernal next turn, just a free 1/1.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good combo. Of course, he kills all the 1/1s you may have already made, but yeah.
But you just trade those ahead of time, no big deal.
Yeah, actually, that's legit.
All right, so you mentioned a 5 with the Haunted Creeper. I'm still not on board with the 5. I'm on board with a high 4. Do you want to go?
Sure.
Are you talking 5 here again?
No.
Okay.
I'd say 4. But the point is the fact that card was even a contender for 5, that anybody would even bring that up, that he was in 5 range. This to me, solid 4. And you know what? We talked about this last episode. You asked me if there were any of the cards that I would want to craft the gold versions of.
Yeah.
Especially since he spits out other guys, and that's kind of my criteria. I think he may be front of the line for me to craft the gold version of. And he's a common.
So
okay.
He's cheap. Nice.
Yeah.
Dude, I opened the Golden Implosion, which is also very fun.
Oh, yeah.
So then you get all the little golden imps. It's just extra insult.
Yep.
All right, so Constructed Arena, I'm fine with 4 for both.
I'd do 4 for both.
Yeah, all right. Cool.
Ship it.
Let's look at the last class, the Warrior.
Warrior.
Maybe least. It could be both. At least.
Well, Yeah.
All right, let's look at the first one. This is another case where I think I got the raw end of the deal. I got Revenge. 2-cost, rare spell. Deal 1 damage to all minions. If you have 12 or less health, deal 3 damage instead. Right? So I just don't get this card. Maybe you can fill in some blanks for me, Scott. At above
I don't know about that.
Okay. There may just be no blanks to fill.
Yeah.
Above 12 health, it's an overcosted Whirlwind, right? Because Whirlwind is 1 mana for the same effect.
Right. So most of the game, because
Yeah.
if you get down to 12 health, odds are that you're on a trajectory to go lower faster.
Yeah. And it also probably means you don't have minions on the board. I mean, because the big upside for this is to proc Enrage, right? That's the dream. Except that a lot of Enrage minions have 3 health. So, I mean, if you're below 13 health, you're just going to wipe those things out.
Well, I think the Enrage... To me, I'm starting to use Enrage beyond just a keyword, at least like in an Enrage deck sense of the word. Because yes, they're Enrage minions and they want to be hurt for 1, but now you've got so many other cards, right? You've got the Axe Flinger, you've got the Shield Bearer, you've got Frothing Berserker, you've got Grim Patron. Like, there are a lot of cards now that just want to take small amounts of damage. You've got Acolyte of Pain, which is huge on that.
Grim Patron, though, I mean, you're gonna Grim Patron and Acolyte of Pain, you're gonna kill both of them with 3 damage.
Oh, sorry, if you're below the 12 health.
Yeah,
I was focusing on the 1.
Sorry, yeah. So on the 1, there's definitely value there, but not any more value than Whirlwind, which just does it better.
Well, right. Okay. So sorry. Yes.
So I was looking at what is the upside, right? The upside is basically if you are behind, your board is empty and you can clear things. I mean, this card is, I just don't get it.
I'm with you, man. The 3 damage to everything, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was a card that was just, all right, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Just 2 mana, deal 3 damage to all minions. Would you play it? It's like a Hellfire that doesn't hurt players.
Yeah. I mean,
cheaper Hellfire that doesn't hurt players.
I mean, I would play it in some decks. Like, I might play it in like a Control Mage.
Well, would you play it in a Warrior deck? Control Warrior?
I don't think so. There's just so many good Warrior minions that have 3 health. I mean, I don't want to get anywhere near that. Like, you want to be running Cruel Taskmaster. You want to be running Warsong Commander. You want to be running Kor'kron Elite. I mean, this is just going to kill all of them. Yeah,
so I think what we're saying is, in the first mode, deal 1 damage to all your minions for 2. It's an overcosted Whirlwind, and I don't run Whirlwind by itself anyway because I think it's overcosted. I always take it attached to Unstable Ghoul or Death Spite. There's a little bit of control as to when it fires, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And then in the other mode, I think we're just saying it's unplayable and we're not really interested in playing it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, this card's garbage.
Are we talking 0? Are we talking gang up?
Yeah, I will say it actually does do something though. I mean, to me, 0 is a special place where it really does either nothing or functionally nothing. Like even Poison Seeds does functionally nothing.
A special circle of card hell is reserved for 0s.
Yeah.
All right, I'm fine with a 1, right? Let's say it's a low 1. I don't even want to group it up with some of the other ones that we've given.
Yeah,
because I'd take Twilight Whelp over this card for sure.
Yeah. Looking on the Hearthstone, the little pie chart, Control has a much, much, much bigger pie slice than it does in any of the other deck types.
Yeah. And
then it's got combo behind that, but I don't know what combo deck they're running this in because, like you said, if you get low on health, it just kills all your own stuff.
Yeah.
And the point of these cards is you want to hurt them a little. You don't want to kill them.
Yeah. I don't get it. So I'll stick with 1, but I mean,
1.
Yeah, maybe even because in Arena, I guess it's still removal. Okay, fine. 1.
Yes, yeah.
0. My secret is 0. Don't tell Scott.
Oh gosh.
All right, it'll be 1 on the site, but not in my heart.
Not in your heart.
All right, hit us with the last card, Scott.
The last one, man. All right, Axe Flinger, 4 mana cost, 2/5. So again, half a mana off. Oh wait, no. full mana off.
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever this minion takes damage, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So I'll tell you, I was actually really hyped about this card.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, if you get 1 activation off of it, which of course you're going to, it's a 5 toughness minion. So unless they just assassinate it or something silly, which would cost more than it even cost, you're going to hurt them for 2 damage. And so I thought myself, okay, well that's worth a solid mana, and in fact it's got 5 health, so it's probably going to go off twice, maybe even 3 times in the right deck with like whirlwind effects, or maybe you're fighting aggro, or you're choosing to run it into little wimpy guys. You might even get 3 activations. It's not crazy. And so being a mana off to deal 6 damage sounded really good to me. But then I played with it, and it just wasn't performing, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, on paper, this thing should be awesome. I even had an arena deck where I drafted 3 of these things, and I even played all 3 in one game, and I'm like, this is great, but I'm going to kill this guy with nothing but axe flingers.
Yeah.
And I think that what I was finally able to put my finger on is that, yes, it's great to hurt your opponent with direct damage. However, it's not helping you get board advantage. Like, unless you actually get them to 0 health, it doesn't matter that you lowered their health.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you weren't helping yourself win with board state, because he's an overcosted minion if you ignore the ability, right? You've thrown an extra mana away for that ability. So yeah, sure, my axe flingers were hurting him, but I was actually behind on board state. That's what I was finding, is I couldn't get my feet dug in, because he was able to slap my stuff down too easily, because he was investing in just like vanilla or better creatures.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting comparison to Flamewalker, right? Which is 1 less mana and 1 less health. But that one deals its damage randomly amongst enemies, so it actually can help keep the board clear. It can have an effect.
Right.
But this is just straight to the hero, no options.
Right. And so that's what I think I missed, was that this thing just, it doesn't help you build board advantage. So maybe if you've got a deck, and I put this in an enrage deck, and I think maybe it doesn't want to be in an enrage deck as much as actually I don't know what deck it does want to go in. I think it wants to be in like a super aggro deck, and that's not what I was playing.
Yeah, but even then it's just it's a weird aggro card. Like, I mean, you could be dropping the Kor'kron Elite or the or what's the 5-cost, wait for it, the Nightblade, right? Where you're like guaranteed to get that damage and just leave a bigger body on the board. It's a weird card. I agree. Like, when I looked at it, I think we talked about it before, where it's just like, this is the card. Yeah, my note here says, this is the card Enraged Warrior decks want. And I wrote that before the card came out. And that's just, it's not true. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of fun, but 2/5, man, it's just, the body is so weak.
Yep. And I got to say, I mean, as long as you win, this is a weird thing to say, but as long as you win, then he was good value. And what I meant by that is that he probably helped do his job to close the distance. But he's not going to help you with board control. So that means in order for this guy to be really effective, he has to win via a different mechanism than board control. He has to win via, well, either the rest of your deck is doing the board control, and that's why I said aggro in a weird sort of way, because aggro is all about just like punching face any way you can. And you mentioned that, the 4/3 charge, the Kor'kron Elite. Yeah, actually maybe Kor'kron Elite is better, because you bring him down. This guy doesn't have charge, that guy does, so you deal 4 damage turn of. Well, that's like 2 procs of this guy.
Yeah.
Except he's got 2 more attack and 2 less toughness. Yeah, I think Kor'kron Elite is just a way better card than this, now that you point that out.
Yeah, I mean, Kor'kron Elite has to obey taunt, right? But I mean,
yeah.
If you're going aggro, you should have some way to deal with that too. I mean,
right.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think in Arena, it's probably significantly less valuable, because Arena is so much about board control and just keeping bodies down. I guess maybe a little higher in Constructed. I mean, in Arena, I would go so far as a 2.
Yeah, I don't think he's a 3 in Arena.
Yeah.
I would say 2. I was afraid you were going to go for a 1.
No, because it's a decent body, right? It's going to get damage down.
Well, it's a mana cost off, but
Yeah.
it's not one of those where we're going to say the ability won't fire. The ability will fire. Like, you will probably deal 4 damage to the enemy hero with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just may take a couple of turns.
All right. So constructed, how low are you thinking?
See in the show notes that I said a 4, but I don't know, man. Now I'm second guessing that, and I'm thinking maybe a 3. I don't know if I'd played with him when I put that 4 in here.
Yeah, I think the 3 is pretty good, right? Because 3 is Chillwind Yeti. I mean, it's still a decent body that you're happy to have in there, and I think in the right deck, you're still happy to have him in there. But he's not going to be swinging games.
Yeah, and he might go up in value if they introduce any more whirlwind type effects. And I'm not counting revenge when I say that last card.
Yeah,
because that was horrible. But if they introduce other viable, deal 1 to everything, he might get better.
Yeah. All right, Scott, we got a question this time. It's from me. What? So on last episode, we talked a lot about neutral cards, right? From Blackrock Mountain. I want to know, have you played any since then that you've drastically changed your mind on?
Let's see.
Or not even drastically, that you've changed your mind on. How about that?
Yeah, the one that jumps to mind is Emperor Thorson. I wish I hadn't given him a 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I mean, there's a lot of people that would fight you on that.
Yeah, they'd fight me on Lotheb too. To me, Lotheb's a 4. I don't remember if we gave him a 4 or 5, but I know a lot of people think he's a 5, and I know I don't think that.
So what is it that kind of made you second guess that?
The fact that the turn that you cast him, he is a 6 mana cost, 5/5. He is just overcosted. He doesn't come on the board with any other abilities. He's not like a Dr. Boom. He's not like a taunt creature, like a Sludge Belcher. He doesn't let you draw more cards to give you more opportunities. If you top deck him in the late game, he does nothing. If you only had cards in your hand that you're going to be able to cost anyway, it doesn't matter. He did nothing. There are so many circumstances where you're overpaying for him and he's not providing good value that, to me, a 5 is a unit that you drop on the board and it makes a difference always, every game. Like, when can Kel'Thuzad land on the board and not kick ass? He's a 6/8 under all circumstances, and like, if there's even a single other minion on the board on your side, then he can have tremendous value. Thorson, I'm not saying he's not good in some cases. 4 is a solid rating that we give a lot of good cards, but I don't think he's a 5.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's where I've netted out. I think he's too low impact. I think people are rating him too highly. I think he's good. I think he's above average. I think people are rating him too highly. And I think even in the decks where he's a rock star, he's a 4. And I think there's a lot of decks where he's not even a 4. I think people are putting him in everything just because they think they should, and I think that's the wrong strategy. I think they're weakening their decks.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, well, I got the opposite story for you, Scott. I'm regretting. I believe you talked me down to this score, so I hold you wholly accountable. I am regretting giving Nefarian a 3. That guy is
Really?
not a 3 in Constructed. So like I said, I've been playing him in the Dragon deck. And your big concern was that there are a lot of bad class spells.
Yeah.
And that you won't always get good things. But I have consistently gotten at least 1 card's value. Most of the time, 2 cards value because he draws 2 spells when you toss him in. So you're getting an 8/8 for 9 mana and 2 spells. Always at least 1 spell. The worst case I got was against Shaman. And they gave me Reincarnate, which I basically just used to heal up one of my fatties. And then, what was it? It was one like Frost Shock or something like that. That's just not a great card. But it still is, like, that was the worst case I've seen. I've been playing against, like, Mage. You just see a whole lot in Constructed nowadays, and you're pulling Fireballs and Pyroblasts and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't think he's a 5, but I would have been happier with a little 4. I've also been enjoying the Blackwing Technician, which I think I tried to talk you up on, but I understand why. But I'm liking him, or her, I guess, a Goblin, a lot. It's just always a 3/5 for 3, which is just solid.
If you're playing a solid dragon deck,
Yeah.
I yeah, even in my light dragon deck where I had like 8, maybe 10, but I think yeah, 8 to 10 dragons. It was usually a 3/5. There were some instances where I had to hold it a little bit or cast it as a 2/4. It wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah. Because the biggest problem I've run into, which I mentioned earlier with the Dragon Paladin deck, is just aggro decks, and this is really the only card in the deck that is keeping me stable and steady. That and just trading the Fairy Dragon away when it's on the board. The only things keeping me going until the late game.
You're playing a Fairy Dragon in there?
Yeah.
Huh.
You not a fan of that?
No, not really.
So what are you dropping early if not that?
Man, I'd much rather have a shielded mini bot instead of a Fairy Dragon, and it's not like you're holding the Fairy Dragon to activate the dragon abilities. So I think a shielded mini bot would be way better.
All right,
or even the Aldor Peacekeeper. I mean, if you're actually looking to drop it on turn 2,
I do have 2 Aldor Peacekeepers in there. Yeah.
Or sorry, that's the 3 mana cost? What's the
Argent Protector?
Yeah, that's the 2 mana cost that gives the Divine Shield to somebody else.
So the trouble with that is he's not an early minion, right? He is late game.
Right.
I just need something to trade early.
Yeah, then shielded mini bot's totally the thing.
All right,
yeah,
I'm swapping it out right now. That's why I love these shows, Scott. My decks get better as we record them. The one thing I'll say is I kind of fell out of love with. I was never fully in love with the Draconids or Dragonkin Sorcerer.
Huh. Okay.
I guess in Dragon, I'm not running. The only spell that's targeted is Blessing of Wisdom in my deck.
You don't run Blessing of Kings?
I'm not running Blessing of Kings.
Man, I recognize that I'm out of step with most players, but I love the buff cards. And Blessing of Kings is in every Paladin deck I run. I feel like it's one of those cards that I value more highly than everybody else, and I feel like I'm right about that. I feel like I get additional value, and maybe it's just my play style. And yes, I know it's only a 4, quote unquote, only a 4/4 for 4, whereas like a Chillwind Yeti is 4/5. But man, the ability to sort of have it be haste damage, to just do a big unexpected punch to the face, or to just grow some minion to huge sizes and then take out something of your opponents that they didn't expect to lose, and you still have this huge body left over. Especially in decks with a lot of Divine Shield, which I tend to run a lot of. Like if you're going to put those shielded mini bots in there are a few things as satisfying as throwing Blessing of Kings on a 2/2 with Divine Shield, killing some big 6 toughness minion, and then having an untouched 6/6 left over. It's nuts.
That's true. So, all right. So maybe I should toss Blessing of Kings in there. I'm not sure that actually makes me really like the Dragonkin Sorcerer more.
Yeah,
because at best, sure you got another 2 stats on there, but he's probably going to get silenced or killed anyways. That's not going to save him at that point.
Yeah, so this guy was at the heart of that dragon buff priest deck.
Yeah. And
it's hard for me to say how good it was, because at first I was like, and I think I even tweeted it at you, I was like, this deck is amazing, because I won like 3 or 4 games in a row, and then I played a bunch more with it, and I played them all as ranked, and then I noticed later that I only had 1 lifetime win with priest, and I'm like, oh, that was the last game I played when I decided to take this thing to ladder, when I won the first game at ranked, and then I never won another game with that deck. but it was about 50-50, I don't know, but there were like Priest in particular had a lot of good cards, and I actually found him in that deck to overperform.
Okay.
Because throwing like Velen's Chosen +2/+4 +1 spell damage onto a 3/5 that gets, I mean, you throw that on it, it's a 6/8. That's bananas.
You did pay 8 mana, right, for that? Or how much is Velen's Chosen?
3.
So you paid 7 mana for that.
That's fair. Yeah. But again, like all they saw was a 3/5. They didn't expect a 3/8 to be doing some business on the board. And I was playing with I'm trying to think what the other buff cards I had. I had a Holy Fire in there, which is great.
Power Word Shield. I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah, 2 Power Word Shields, of course. Why not? And I feel like I had something else as well. But anyway, yeah, in that deck, he was pretty good. I also don't know that deck is the right deck to build, and I could see in the Paladin deck where you've got Blessing of Wisdom, maybe Blessing of Kings, and I just can't even think of what else you'd even want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here was kind of my thoughts with it. Just want to get your quick thoughts on it. I wondered if it felt like one of those cards like when Hearthstone first came out, this deck would be good. Or sorry, the Dragonkin Sorcerer would be, of course I'd put it in my deck. But I feel like we're starting to get to a point where it's like there's so many good cards, like only the best few of new sets have room.
Yeah, I've heard people complain about power creep, and my view on that is that I think it's less about power creep in like a blatant way. It's more that just there have always been good and bad cards, peaks and valleys. But now there's so many cards that there's so many peaks that nobody's playing the valleys anymore because you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't need crap filler. You can have good filler.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to fill your deck with the 2s and the 3s to stay on concept. You can fill them with the 3s and the 4s to stay on concept now.
Yeah. Obviously the way other card games have handled this is by cycling out sets, right? Where you're just playing the 3 sets for a year like in Magic. Do you think that's the future of Hearthstone once we hit a certain point? Wild speculation, of course.
Right. So what they can't do is they can't go on for another 10 years and expect to have, the most casual CCG on the market and have 2,000 cards. It's just not going to fly.
Yeah.
And not that they're growing quite that fast, but they are growing at, 150 a year, give or take, something like that. So yeah, actually maybe they would be at 1,500, 2,000 cards. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Here's the thing. I don't think they know what they're going to do. I've read a lot of design articles from Blizzard, and it seems pretty clear that in a lot of cases they're solving the problems for now, and they are leaving problems for later. That 4th button on the main menu that nobody knows what it does? I don't think there's a purpose for it. I don't think they thought through it.
They just knew they would need a button eventually, so they just left a spot for it.
Yeah, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's the impression I get from listening to what they're saying and the spirit in which they're saying it. I think that additional deck slots, they want to do them, but they have this tough UI challenge, and they kind of back themselves into a corner from a UI perspective. I listened to I can't remember if it's GDC or, it was some like game developer conference thing where their UI guy was going over their UI journey, and he was basically saying that they are investing in now and at the cost of later. And that's why I think their development momentum has been so slow, is in part because they spend a lot of time on everything they do, more time than anybody else, like polishing all the little details. But part of it's just that they weren't thinking that far ahead. And that can be a good strategy, because if you try and be clever and think far ahead, then you end up doing work now for something that you may or may not even need later on.
Yeah.
And it's better to ship a game now, have people playing your game now, so that you have the benefit of it being slow and cumbersome later.
Yeah.
Better that than no game now. So anyway, that's all a very long-winded way of saying that I don't even know if I'm sure they're starting to think about it now, but I don't think they've hit the capacity limit of what they can stomach. And it's going to be a tough pill to swallow, as it was with Magic in the early days, to start telling people, hey, you can't use all of your cards in certain formats.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do, because they've come up with very creative solutions to all the hurdles they've come across so far that have turned out pretty well. So I'm really excited to see what they think to solve that. It's just something that crossed my mind when I was looking at Dragonkin Sorcerer, because I wanted to love him. I had a hard time.
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at a couple reviews before we close this show out. Cool. Akira Lappin says, fantastic, 5 stars. Josh is rad. Great co-hosts. Great analysis and insight for all levels. Matthew Bebe says, favorite podcast, 5 stars. I seriously love this podcast. Seriously. He's very serious, Scott.
Seriously.
So serious. It's the perfect mix of informative and entertaining. Josh is a perfect host. Aw, you're a perfect listener, Matthew Bebe. And I can't say enough good things about him. Wormholer. Ooh, doesn't that like imply time travel? Is this guy from the future? Well, the future says we do a great job, Scott. In the future, they are using the decks we've listed, and they went to rank 20 in one day. Thanks so much. I earned my first card back. Congrats, Wormholer.
Nice.
Let us know what the future card backs are going to be and which ones we should look out for. All right. I think that's the show. Any parting thoughts on Blackrock Mountain?
Not as impactful as Naxxramas.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope they grow into dragons a little more. I hope they drop some dragon cards to kind of fill it out down the road.
Yeah, I agree. Because I'm loving the dragon play style because it's very much more control late game, which is more my style. Cool. So we're gonna have full show notes along with links to all the cards we talked about, our thoughts on them, our scores, so you can review them for posterity. And months from now, when we are absolutely wrong, you can point back and laugh. Just as we will. You can find that on GameDiplomat.com. Swing by there. Click on Hearthstone at the top. You'll find everything you could ever want about everything you have ever loved. As always, though, we'd love to know what you thought of the show and what you'd like to see added to the show in future episodes. You can find us on Google+. Just search for Happy Hearthstone. I'm on Twitter @JAugustine, or you can email me, ajosh@outlook.com, or just leave a comment on the blog, GameDiplomat.com. This post will be the top of the list on the top of the morning. Scott, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at @slants76, and I'm also over at Hearthstone if they want to look up my decks, just at Slants.
Awesome. Scott, thanks for joining us. Thanks for duking it out with me over these cards until we could come to a resolution.
As always, a ton of fun.
Always. And thanks, everyone, for listening and visiting the Happy Hearthstone and having a little fun with us. We'll see you next time.
See you, everyone.
Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Don't forget to check out all the other podcasts at MMOreporter.com or by clicking on any of the links here. And please check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMOreporter. Thanks, everyone, and see you in game.